Welcome to PixelTunes Radio,
a podcast where we have fun
talking about video games
and video game music.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Ed.
And we're here to talk to you about our favorite run-and-gun video games and the soundtracks that bequeath them.
This is a long time coming, man. I felt like doing this episode maybe when we started doing the show 2 years ago, and we just never got around to it, so
I wonder why.
Well, we did Contra. We did a whole episode on Contra.
True.
And so that kind of got all our run-and-gun juices out of our system or flowing or whatever. And so doing another run-and-gun episode so close to that just felt like it was too much too quickly. So this is a non-Contra run-and-gun episode. If you want to hear some Contra music, please go back and listen to our All Contra All the Time episode, because I think we covered almost every single game in the series
all
on
of the
that
Contra.
Show. Anyhow, so let's get into our PixelChat segment. We've got a lot of really cool questions today to get to, and then we'll bust out with some music. So, what is our first question?
Our first question comes from Emily, also known as Keyglyph, and she asked, Ed, you mentioned in episode 5 or 6 that you recorded VGM soundtracks to cassette tapes when you were a kid. I have to know, which ones? And did you ever tell your friends you were doing this? The original soundtracks that I recorded to cassette were Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, Sonic 3D Blast, Sonic Adventure, yes, I am a Sonic fan, Echo the Dolphin, Echo the Tides of Time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters, the Genesis version, and Pokemon Gold.
Wow, no overlap with my tracks whatsoever. First off, hi Emily. Emily is co-host of the amazing VGM Jukebox video game music podcast. I love their show. They are totally rad, so give them a listen if you can. All right, so to answer the question, and this is just like the tip of the iceberg, because this used to be like my hobby, recording video game soundtracks. Super Adventure Island, Phalanx, Super EDF, Super R-Type, Battle Clash, Spider-Man, X-Men, and Arcade's Revenge. I mean, when I heard that Tim Follin soundtrack, it was like, I don't care about the game, I am recording this. The Super Scope 6 soundtrack, Extra Innings on the SNES, Super Castlevania 4, Space Megaforce, Mario Paint, and then I had a separate cassette full of original compositions that I made in Mario Paint.
Oh my god.
Turtles in Time for the Super Nintendo, the first Ninja Turtles Game Boy game, Dr. Mario on the NES, Sonic 2, so I did have some Sonic in there, Final Fight, Shadowrun on the SNES, Wanderers from Ys 3, a ton more. When it started getting up to like the Red Book audio games with Sega CD and all that stuff, I would convert those to cassette so I could listen to them on tape in my car with my headphones.
Okay, then.
So I didn't have to talk to my parents and my brother. And that's just, I didn't have any regular albums. I never listened to regular music, so it was all VGM all the time. That was my music. So
all VGM all of the time.
Yes. Thank you, Emily. That was an awesome question. All right, so she asks a second question for Mike. So she says, Mike, you mentioned that you would pop in NES cards like Fester's Quest just to listen to the music. What other games had such awesome tunes that they similarly compelled you? The NES carts that I would put in just to listen to the music were Tecmo Bowl and WCW World Championship Wrestling. In fact, the title screen music from Tecmo Bowl is the first video game tune I remember being addicted to. I love that music too. That was really cool.
No, Tecmo Bowl is great music. That's a great question. I had a lot of difficulty picking games for this, and I went through my collection and I'm trying to think, because as time has gone on, I've come to appreciate the games for more than just the music in a lot of ways, but the 3 or 4 that I would say really kind of were games that, at least back in the day, I used to pretty much just play just for the music were Blaster Master, Astynex, Bad Dudes, and Spider-Man X-Men Arcade's Revenge.
Okay.
It's just like...
good choices all around. I think I had
head.
the Astynex soundtrack too that I recorded to tape.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
Yeah.
Blaster Master especially. Bad Dudes more like nowadays. Like when I put in Bad Dudes now, I pretty much just put it in just to listen to the music while I punch a bunch of dudes.
You like putting Bad Dudes in?
Yeah. I like putting Bad Dudes in my system. But Blaster Master was definitely one of those ones that I had growing up as a kid, but like I was so bad at the game that like I just came to appreciate the music more than the game. Thank you very much for the questions, Emily. So Emily also mentions something really funny that it just kind of threw me back. She sent us a really big email, which was really cool to read through. But one of the things that she mentioned was being embarrassed to tell people that she was listening to video game music. I have a story about that as well. when I was in high school, I would listen to all sorts of stuff. I was really big into like Metallica and Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath. Like I was getting into metal, but I still had this weird, awkward appreciation for video game music that I knew nobody else really had, or at least nobody that at the time that would share something like that with me. So I'm walking around high school with my Discman, with my like CD player and a pair of headphones, and just walking the halls listening to like anything really, but specifically I remember Symphony of the Night, the Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and I remember listening to that, and one day I dropped it, I dropped the CD player, and the CD popped out and it shattered, like it snapped in half. Man. And I was more concerned with scooping up the remains of this CD
so nobody
saw it than being like, oh man, like one of my favorite soundtracks broke. Like, no, I was just like devastated that people may see what I was listening to.
That's funny.
Because I mean, you're in high school, like you don't something like that could like scar your social status for life. So it's like, I don't know, I was really concerned about that. But yeah, like people would ask me like what I was listening to, and I had to be like, Metallica.
Ride the Lightning.
Yeah. Well, and it made perfect sense because I was walking around with a Metallica t-shirt, but I was listening to video game music.
I don't think I was ever really embarrassed about it. I kind of understood that it was a niche thing and that nobody else was into it, so I didn't really go advertising it.
Right.
My brother was into it, not as much as I was, but we were able to share video game music between ourselves.
Right.
So it wasn't like I didn't have anybody to talk about it with. And then in high school, I was definitely like all grungified, so I wasn't really listening to too much VGM back then, so I didn't have to worry about that. But,
Word.
Yeah, so.
I don't know why, but you've got eyeliner on in this situation?
No, that was my goth phase.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then you've got like really long, like flippy hair. It's like flipping to the side. And
okay, that was
you're
accurate.
just like, I just picture you like pressed up against like somebody else's car, and you're just like, man, I do what I want, and then you just like break a window. You'd be like a punk that like Cody would beat up in Final Fight,
like a grunge punk.
Yeah, you'd be a grunge punk.
Okay,
you'd be 2P.
No, man, 2P was all punk. He was like hip hop punk.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, there weren't really any grungy guys.
All right, you could be Poison.
Fair enough. Anyhow, all right, so let's get on to our next question. Thank you again, Emily, for those awesome questions, and keep them coming. Now, this one is from our pal, Vasiliy Boshkov, and he asks, do you remember any romantic locations from video games? For me, it was the place under the railway bridge in Half-Life 2. You're sitting on those rafters, very, very high, somewhere many feet under you. You see the sea, you see the waves. It's so beautiful and calm, just calm noise of waves, rare sounds of seagulls, and even more sounds of the train that goes from time to time somewhere above you. Just you in that height, calmness, your rewarded moment of stillness after fights with zombies and soldiers. Just everything, the whole world is somewhere far away, and nothing will bother you. Aw, little kitty cat face emoji.
I just, the whole thing with him talking about, like, what romantic locations do you remember? I remember Half-Life 2. Like,
it's not what you would think.
No.
That's such a depressing looking game. But no, I think I remember that area, and it was pretty cool. So what would you have picked for this?
Oh, man. I would say, lately at least, the Super Nintendo Waterworld game, specifically that map area, when you're cruising around on your ship.
Okay.
Oh, my God. That song is just... Actually, it's funny. I just went to a bonfire last night, and me and my buddy Brian, who was on the show previously, way back on like episode, what was it, 4?
5.
5?
You always say that. I always
know.
say 5.
Yeah. Chilling, hanging out, listening to a bunch of New Jack Swing and like freestyle music and stuff. And I was like, yo, I'm going to turn this down a notch. I was like, yo, put this song on. And he put Waterworld, the map area. And everybody who was there, especially the people who don't listen to video game music, were like, this is a really good song. And I was like, yeah, it is.
Cool, yeah.
It's just so chill. And
video game music is awesome, especially when it can have effect on people who don't listen to video game music. So that's really cool.
One of these days I'll play that song on the show.
So for me, I guess the most recent memory of a romantic location in a video game is Uncharted 4, because I don't want to spoil too much, but eventually during the game you end up adventuring through this location with your wife. And so there are several locations, like you're going through this big jungle-like area on an island, and there are these alcoves with waterfalls that flow over like huge rocks and just drop off of cliffs, and just, giant outcroppings where you can look out over the sea and the ocean and the sun is setting. And so you could just imagine kind of just, you're searching for people that might be getting killed by the bad guys, and you're like searching for them, but you can imagine just like hanging out and making out while your while your friends are getting killed somewhere else, having a nice little romantic evening. So yeah, that's probably my most recent romantic location in a video game. All right, next question. Thank you, Vasiliy, for that question.
Next question is from our good friend Cam Worma. Hey guys, I'll try not to go too far off the rails with this one. When people talk about games that haven't aged well, I tend to get a little confused, as it can be tough to pin down what this actually means. Games that fall into this category seem to be games that were graphically interesting for the time, but are perhaps too awkward to even look at today. Or maybe they're games that introduce some kind of innovative mechanic that amidst today's games just feels clunky and primitive. I've also noticed that they all seem to be post-16-bit era, almost invariably, which sort of makes sense. Other than that, there doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to it. I was just wondering what you guys think contributes to a game not aging well, and thought maybe you could give an example or two. Thanks, and keep it up. PTR is pretty okay, I guess.
Well, thanks, Cam.
God.
I don't necessarily agree with his statement that it's all post-16-bit era. I think there are plenty of pre-16-bit games that haven't aged well. My definition, or what it seems to mean for me, is that there are games out there which may have innovated a play mechanic or a genre of game, but then was improved upon by those who came afterwards. Like, they weren't shameless clones. It wasn't like, I'm trying to be this game, but I'm failing. Mm-hmm. For instance, like Renegade on the NES.
Okay.
And then you have Final Fight on the Super Nintendo. That makes Renegade not age well, because it's the same play mechanic, just done not nearly as well as Final Fight did it. Or the first Driver, which at the time was like the pinnacle of technology. Really cool physics, driving through an open world city. But then now you've got Saints Row, you've got GTA 5, you've got all these amazing games that are essentially the same play mechanic, all based on that first game. And then you go back to Driver now and you're like, wow, why am I playing this when I could be playing something in the same vein but 20 times better? So those are two examples I have of games that haven't aged well, and why.
You could approach it on like a graphical level. Which I would
graphics
say,
are not as big of a deal for me as most people, so that's why I stayed away from that.
I would probably say that the 32-bit era, like the PlayStation era, N64 type games, a lot of those games didn't age well, like visually.
Early polygons. Yeah, well, like Driver, that's a prime example.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's early polygons, and, visually, I think there's less of a charm that I think we can appreciate. I would personally say, at least on a gameplay level, that even though games like Tomb Raider and Resident Evil have, like, tank controls, and those really haven't aged that well, especially when you compare it to modern-day games, it was still hugely innovative at the time. My big thing is games that I didn't grow up with, or an era of gaming that is just too far gone for me. So I would say a lot of the early stuff like Atari 2600, ColecoVision and Television, all that stuff is too old for me. I can't play it. Yeah. Like, I owned an Atari for a short time, and I just couldn't get into any of the games. There was nothing to motivate me. Yeah. And back then, it was more about a visual revolution than actually, like, mattering in terms of what you were doing on the screen. Like, you were changing things on the screen.
It was a novelty at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. And, back then it was more about scores than finishing something.
Practicing, and it was more of a group activity than just sitting there trying to do it by yourself.
Exactly.
So that's understandable.
Yeah.
And, like, I had an Atari 2600 when I was a kid before the NES was out. And so I would play with my dad and my grandfather and my brother. So we did have kind of a team atmosphere and competed for scores and played together and such. So that's why I have more of a fondness for, like, the old 2600 than you would. Yeah. For sure.
No, definitely not.
All right, we're going a little bit long. We got one more quick question. We'll start with the music. This one is from Jeff Leopard. Hey guys, did you play any of the classic Sierra games on PC back in the day? If so, which ones stood out for you? If not, you bring shame to your family. Well, Jeff, I'm bringing shame to my family. I did not play any Sierra games, but before you come at me with the torches and pitchforks, it's simply because I didn't have a computer or any sort of system that was capable of playing those games. I had a Mac, an old Macintosh SE that we had forever and ever and ever. I didn't get an IBM PC compatible until like 97, 98. By that time, Sierra was already moving into the action game territory, and my Windows 95 machine was more for playing those kind of games, and I didn't even know the other ones existed. I did really like Maniac Mansion on the NES, so I could assume that had I had the opportunity to play those kind of games, that I would have enjoyed them, because I do like those kind of games nowadays.
So I actually do have one. My first PC was an IBM Aptiva, and the game that I spent a ton of time with, aside from like Doom and Final Doom and all that good stuff, was The Lost Mind of Dr. Brain.
I don't think I've ever even heard of that.
Oh my goodness, I love it. It was the third Dr. Brain game, and it came with my computer, because back in the day you could buy like packages and they would come with basically CD-ROMs full of PC games.
Yeah, demos and stuff.
This was the game that I got initially really addicted to. It's a really cool like puzzle game, and it's kind of like I don't want to say an edutainment game, but it kind of is. So yeah, really good stuff.
Speaking of which, for people that do have kids that are listening to this show, I've been playing through the Pajama Sam and Putt Putt games with Logan, my 5-year-old, and he's absolutely loving it. And they are a perfect gateway game into like the LucasArts, Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle type stuff. Lots of cool problem solving, very, very fun games. So
cool.
If you want to get into those games or get your kids into those games, those are a great way to start. All right, so that is everything that we have to talk about, correct?
Goodness, yes, we are good. So let's start off with the music. This is our first pick, Mega Turrican on the Sega Genesis. This is stage 3-1 by Mr. Chris Huelsbeck. Welcome back. That was Mega Turrican on the Sega Genesis or Sega Mega Drive, whichever you prefer. Stage 3-1 is the track name, and that was by Mr. Chris Huelsbeck.
Yes, sir. And that was developed by Factor 5, published by Data East in North America and Sony ImageSoft in Europe.
1994 was the release.
And it's funny because this game originally was developed for the Genesis and Mega Drive, but they made an Amiga port for it. The Genesis version was supposed to come out first, but then for some reason they couldn't get publishing rights, or they couldn't find a publisher for it, so the Amiga version ended up coming out like 2 years before Mega Turrican eventually ended up coming out. A lot of people mistakenly consider this game a port of the Amiga game, when in fact it's actually the other way around. It was developed for the Mega Drive Genesis. So this is one of your favorite and first Genesis games, right?
Yeah, this was one of the first games that I bought for my Genesis. I just remember putting it in and just being wowed by the music. The very first thing was the music that I noticed right off the bat. And this was back in the day when I worked at a game store, so picking up a Genesis was just kind of one of those things that I've always wanted to do. I kind of had to get over my Nintendo fanboyism. And once I did, I said, you know what, maybe Sega's not that bad after all. And I picked up a Genesis, and definitely this Mega Turrican track just totally fell in love with at least the first two levels, definitely. Just really awesome, 80s vibe. This track in particular, just really awesome, just Japanese sound to it, Japanese action music that Mr. Huelsbeck was going for, so I quite enjoyed it. I thought that it was 80s enough that even though it was made in the 90s, you could tell that it was developed with that 80s mindset, just really high-end synths and tight, snappy percussion, just really good stuff.
Totally. I love the drums in this game. It's so heavy. That snare is just great. The bass is this kind of a FM slappy bass funk amalgamation. This is one of my favorite Genesis soundtracks of all time. And I hear people compare this one a lot to Super Turrican because they're essentially the same soundtrack with a few differences here and there.
Okay. I gotta say the Mega Turrican's better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think Super Turrican has its merits, but no, it's too lighthearted and cinematic sounding. We were talking about this yesterday. It feels like it was composed for the Genesis, which, being the fact the game was developed on this system, you're hearing it the way it was meant to be heard.
Right.
But yeah, especially in this one, that bass line just permeates throughout the whole thing. It's nice and fast-paced. It matches the pace of the game extremely well. And Huelsbeck just has this kind of trademark Turrican sound. He has other compositions on other games that sound very different, but this, you can hear a Turrican tune, it's a Turrican tune when you hear it, regardless of whether you've listened to that song or not before.
Very true. I will say that the characters and the story in Turrican never intrigued me. I don't know what it is. I just...
It's the machine.
Yeah, it's just...
It's kind of a side thing to the game. The game is all about the gameplay. It's just, there's a giant race of aliens that are taking over planets, and you, as Bren McGuire, don your Turrican suit and destroy all the baddies. I mean, there's nothing really to worry about in terms of story.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing with these games is, even though a lot of them do a lot of packing in of story and characters and all that information, it kind of goes by the wayside because these are very easy pick up and play games. It's basically just see something moving, shoot at it, and that's the whole point of run and gun.
So speaking of story, our next game up is Alien Soldier for the Mega Drive. This one's a fun one. This is Runner AD 2025 from Norio Hanzawa. And we're back. That was Runner AD 2025 from Norio Hanzawa from the game Alien Soldier, released on the Mega Drive in the late 16-bit era of 1995.
Yes.
Wow, that's a crazy track. From what I understand, at least in the sound test in the game, the title is Runner/AD 2025. So what I assume is that kind of frenetic part at the beginning is called Runner, and then there's that pause, and then it goes into AD 2025.
This track was very busy.
It is, and Hanzawa's tracks are always like that.
Yeah, I thought that this track sounded good though. I like his work. It's not something I would. It's hard to put into words because I don't want to say it's bad. I think it's good. I just think it's very noisy, and because I know that you're, an industrial kind of guy.
Yeah, but this isn't industrial at all. This
No.
is just very frenetic, like action music. Industrial music has a lot of staccato, grindy percussion and punctuated by huge percussive elements. And this doesn't really at all. There's almost like a static wall in the background, whether it's just like an open hi-hat that keeps going like shh, 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 or what. But it's like it always just feels like there's no rests, there's no time to catch your breath when you're listening to this song.
Oh, yeah. And it fits with the gameplay, at least, because the game is very action-packed, very fast, and very difficult.
Yeah. Alien Soldier was basically made to be one of the most difficult games available at the time.
And impressive, too, like, in terms of, like, visually, audio-wise. The game was just, it stressed impressiveness.
Yes. And actually, at the top of the title screen, it says, Visual shock, sound shock, speed shock. Now is time to the 68,000 heart on fire. Basically, it's a bad Japanese to English translation, but what they're trying to convey is that this game is so fast and huge and incredible that it's actually like risking overheating the 68,000 processor that's in the Mega Drive. So they really wanted to let you know that they were kind of programming this game to be the absolute topmost feature-packed kind of a game that the system could really handle.
The Genesis wasn't really known that well for having really big sprites.
True.
And this game just had huge sprites and like big booming bosses and enemies, and the whole thing, especially the main character that you play as, just like really like big and bulky and looks really cool. So graphically, this game is very visually impressive. Yeah, as far as the music goes though, I dig the track, I think it's cool, but I kind of feel like a lot of Hanzawa's music kind of blurs the line. And like, if you put this on and told me it was Gunstar Heroes, and me only playing Gunstar Heroes like a little bit, I would be like, yeah, okay, it's Gunstar Heroes. Like, there's no differentiation between the two. So, speaking of Gunstar Heroes, really quick, there is an absence of Gunstar Heroes. We are aware of this. Do not turn the podcast off because there's no Gunstar Heroes. We really kind of toyed with, should we pick Gunstar Heroes or should we pick something a little different? And this was Ed's pick, actually. And he chose Alien Soldier. And I think I kind of stand by it, too, because I think it's a different track. And from a game that doesn't really get talked about as much, I kind of feel like Gunstar Heroes gets pumped up a little bit too much. It's a good game, don't get me wrong. It's really fun.
It's actually one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
But this game, it came out 2 years after Gunstar Heroes did. It borrows a lot of the same gameplay elements that Gunstar Heroes did.
Right.
And, back in the day, it's a Mega Drive only release, so it came out in Europe and Japan, so Americans never got a chance to play it. So if you haven't heard of it, you can grab a repro card, you can grab a ROM, and you can definitely check it out. Because if you enjoyed Treasure's action games in the past, like, Gunstar Heroes or Gunstar Superheroes on the GBA, then this one would be right up your alley. It's really frenetic, really hard.
Yes.
But you get a whole bunch of different weapons to play with. There's, different gameplay elements where you can hover in midair or, jump onto the ceiling and kind of walk upside down. And the bosses are all completely drugged out looking. Everything's very, very bizarre looking.
Very trippy. How about that story, huh?
Yeah, there's this huge text scroll at the beginning, and it just mentions lots of characters doing different things, but it never really... I've read it like 3 or 4 times now, and I can't really make sense of... There's like a Earth and A humans and Epsilon and Scarlet and Zytiger, and they're all like related
Connected.
somehow, but the verbiage in the text scroll just isn't coherent enough for me to figure it out.
There's a lot of English in it too, which really kind of butchers it.
Yeah.
So it's like you're reading this huge like story, and you're trying to get involved in it, but just like I just want to play the game. Just hit start. Like, I don't know. Norio Hanzawa, definitely no stranger to the podcast. We played him on Mischief Makers on the N64 episode. He has always, for the most part, been a Treasure guy, except for when he was with Konami, which makes sense. I started out in 1989 with Castlevania The Adventure, the very first Castlevania game. He did sound creation on that. Roller games for Konami, Ultra Games, he did sound on that. Quarth, The Simpsons arcade game, Bucky O'Hare, Gunstar Heroes, that's pretty much when he jumped ship and went to Treasure. Yu Yu Hakusho, Dynamite Heady, Alien Soldier, Guardian Heroes, Rakugaki Showtime in 1999, Tiny Toon Adventure Scary Dreams, which is apparently a Game Boy Advance beat-em-up that's going for quite a bit of money. Astro Boy Omega Factor, Advanced Guardian Heroes, Gunstar Superheroes, Bleach the Blade of Fate, Bangayo Spirits, and he ended on Sin and Punishment Star Successor.
He has tons of fans, he has tons of different soundtracks. Very, very well known amongst Japanese video game lovers. All right, let's move on to the next game in our little series. Here we're traveling back in time to 1990. This one is Heavy Barrel on the NES from Shōgo Sakai, Takafumi Miura, Masaaki Iwasaki, Seiuch H, Yuji Suzuki, and Yusuke Takahama.
Welcome back. That was Heavy Barrel, and that game came out on the NES in 1990. The track was Stage 8, and that was by Shōgo Sakai, Takafumi Miura, Masaaki Iwasaki, Seiuch H, Yuji Suzuki, Yusuke Takahama, and the original version was on the arcade, and that was composed by Azusa Hata and Hiroaki Yoshida. Wow, a lot of people. So, Heavy Barrel is a NES port, as mentioned previously, to the arcade game, which featured like a rotary joystick, basically very similar to a lot of the games that were coming out back then. Basically a joystick that you can use to move 8 ways. It's pretty much like a blatant ripoff of the Ikari Warriors games, but in all honesty, I think Heavy Barrel is better. It actually kind of reminds me of Midnight Resistance in a lot of ways.
A little bit, if it
with
was
the key
top
collecting.
down, yeah.
Basically, terrorists have taken over this nuclear missile location, and it is up to you to defeat them. That's
What a complicated plot!
I know. The reason why this game gets its name is one of the weapons that you can pick up. It looks like something. I wouldn't say it's a gun. It kind of looks like you're holding a giant
Heavy Barrel was my adult film name, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just goes hand in hand.
Oh, mine was Midnight Resistance. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. The NES port, the one thing I will say that I don't like about it is, as you're playing through the game, you get these keys. And the keys open up treasure chests that you can get different items from. The problem is, you never really get enough keys, and there's, like, way too many treasure chests. Like, if you get, like, 3 keys, you're lucky. And there'll be like maybe 6 treasure chests, and you're like, which one do I open? And they all kind of feel like they open the same thing, but occasionally you'll open one up and you'll get this giant gun.
You get a piece of a giant gun.
Right,
yeah.
And so that is the heavy barrel.
Right.
When you put the whole thing together, and then you can just destroy everything.
So is it randomized? Because I've only played through this, or not played through it, but I played a good chunk of it last night for the first time ever.
Right.
And I was, using the keys to open the chests, but I didn't know, like, if there were specific chests that you were supposed to open to get the heavy barrel more quickly, or...
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah, I'd have to play it a little bit longer. I picked it up fairly recently myself, and just really fell in love with the music. The track, I just really love that, like, grooving bass. Just, like, the constant bass line in that song.
It's very competent for that age of the NES.
Reminds me a lot of Bad Dudes, and that makes sense because all these composers work on Bad Dudes.
They're all Data East guys.
Yep. So we've talked about these guys actually quite a bit. Shōgo Sakai, obviously, no
introduction for him.
No introduction needed for him. The only one that I was not really sure about was Seiuch H, which he's only listed as Heavy Barrel for sound programming.
That might be an alias that is just unknown at this point.
Yeah, possibly. What's our next track?
Next is an arcade title called Outzone. This came out in 1990. This one is called Pump Them with Bullets from Stage 2 by Tatsuya Uemura. Welcome back. That was Pump Them with Bullets from Stage 2 of Outzone for the arcade, developed by Toa Plan. That was composed by Tatsuya Uemura. So then you might remember him from both of our Shmups episodes, in which we played, I think, Zeroing on Shmups 1.
Right.
And then on Shmups 2, we played Hellfire.
Right.
And he's got a very signature sound.
Yeah, he's got a very distinct sound.
Kind of like a marchy, gallopy kind of a bass with a bass line that follows along with the drums.
Galloping bass.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Very heroic, kind of an uplifting melody. I really like this one. I just like those kind of staccato dun 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 dun.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. It's like almost like dancey kind of, but at the same time it's very like prodding, like
and
keep going.
It's got several different parts to it too. It's not just kind of your standard marchy tune. It goes into a couple different places. This whole soundtrack is actually really good. Uemura worked with Toa Plan for a really long time, so he's got quite a few games under his belt with them.
Yeah, they actually closed up shop in '94, and then he ended up joining a company called Gazelle, and he did a couple more games, one of which was actually a sequel to Battle Garega, which is a great shmup, and that game was called Battle Back Raid. It hasn't really done much since, unfortunately. But yeah, he's pretty much known for that signature, like, Genesis arcadey type action sound.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
The arcade system that this game ran on used the YM3812, which you don't find in too many arcade games, but it was in a whole lot of Sound Blasters back in the day, like the Sound Blaster 16, and it was also a chip that is directly related to it. Like, basically a more cost-effective version of this chip was found in the FM add-on for the Mark III, the Sega Master System, in Japan.
Got it.
So that's where you're going to hear sounds similar to this one.
Interesting.
The game takes place in 2097. Mankind has basically been invaded by an alien race, and cyborg soldiers need to take them out. I mean, again, we're not looking at really hardcore kind of storylines here. It's a vertically scrolling game. Lots of enemies come at you. You pick up power-ups along the way. The graphics are nice. They're big and chunky and colorful.
Yeah.
And
I did really like the colors. They're really bright colors.
Yeah, it runs on a 68,000 processor, so it looks very much like that Mega Drive style graphics that you might find on, like, obviously the X68000 or other systems that use that same processor.
Yeah, it's a shame we never got a port for the Genesis.
Yeah,
I feel like this would be a shoo-in.
It probably would have been a pretty good idea for them to do that, but unfortunately never came to be. And there's also a sequel to this game called Fix 8, with 8 spelled like the number 8 instead of just you're fixating on something.
Right.
Like I'm fixating on how to spell this title. And it's not nearly as good. The graphics just aren't up to par. The gameplay was kind of stiff. The music wasn't even as good. So it's one of those rare occurrences where the sequel actually
was worse.
Dropped the ball on everything.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is a good game. Check it out. It's playable in MAME. I don't know if I haven't seen it in any other collections anywhere. These Toa Plan games really haven't made it into any console game collections that I'm aware of.
Well, after they closed up in '94, Toa Plan didn't really get bought out by anybody. It was more just, hey, they went out of business and that's it.
Yeah.
So you can still check out games like Flying Shark, Tiger Heli, Hellfire, Twin Cobra, Outzone, Dog Yun, and of course Zero Wing, for just a couple of the main games that Uemura did.
All right. Hit me with your next track, please.
All right.
Just do it gentle.
Oh, well, I can't. That's impossible because this next game is Shock Troopers 2. This is one of your favorites.
Oh, yeah, totally.
This is my pick. This is Neo Geo and the Wii Virtual Console, actually. That's how I played it. 1998 was the year of release. The track is called Second Mission, and it's by Masahiko Hataya and Masaaki Kase.
And we're back. That was Second Mission, found on the Shock Troopers 2 soundtrack. That came out originally for the Neo Geo in 1998, and that was composed by Masahiko Hataya and Masaaki Kase.
I love this track.
It's a great track. The whole soundtrack is incredible.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember you playing this way back on, I think it was maybe Ed's Picks?
Ed's Picks.
Yeah, episode 10, and you picked, I think it was a boss battle.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And I remember not liking that track as much. I don't know, I think it was that main synth.
It was kind of like, it was like breakbeat metal kind of a track.
It was interesting, but it made me want to check out the game. And probably about a year later, I picked it up on the Virtual Console because I was browsing through the old Wii Virtual Console. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, Shock Troopers 2. And I remember you talking about the game. And then I remembered, wait a minute, what's Shock Troopers 1? So I actually pulled out my Data East collection, which I have on the Wii, and I started playing Shock Troopers 1, and I was like, this isn't good. I was like, I was not
it's
really
mediocre.
It's very there's way too many characters, you move way too slow. I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
So when I saw this game, I watched a little bit of gameplay footage, was like, you know what, let me check it out. So I picked it up for I think less than $10 on the Wii Virtual Console. And it is really good. It's really fun. As far as this track goes, just really awesome, funky, groovy bass. Good stuff. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Capcom versus SNK stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
As far as the groove.
Yeah.
It definitely got a lot of that.
Well, it makes a lot of sense because Masahiko Hataya, otherwise known as Papaya, worked on the SNK versus Capcom game. So if you listened to our appearance on Pixelated Audio when both of our shows kind of went over it, we did that double crossover.
Right.
We talked a lot about Masahiko Hataya and his work with SNK and just did tons and tons of games for them over the course of the years he was with them.
That makes sense then. Yeah, no, I really dug this game and the soundtrack. It's good stuff. Yeah, I just love that bass. And I like how they kind of pepper in these other instruments that are more, I think, not really providing a deep melody. It's more just a background for the bass to kind of bounce off of.
Yeah, well, it's got that, Mission Impossible keyboard stab. My wife and I are right in the middle of watching Alias right now with Jennifer Garner, and that this song is identical the music they play when they're sneaking around trying to take down the Covenant and all that cool stuff. So yeah, it's just a really good track. It's a little sneakier than I guess the game actually is. The game is just straight up run and gun.
Oh yeah,
you're just walking up to enemies and putting bullets in their faces.
Oh so, yeah, it's
this game makes it sound like it might be more like a Metal Gear kind of a game when it definitely isn't.
No, it's definitely more Metal Slug infused, I'd say, than the first one. I don't know. The first one kind of reminded me a lot more of Mercs, which actually a couple of the game parts where you're blowing up the ships and stuff are direct rip-offs from Mercs.
So did you play Shock Troopers 2 first and then played the first one?
Nope, I played the first one, then played the second one, yeah. So
because I enjoyed the first one, but once I played the second one, I never went back to the first one because I was this, again, opposite of Outzone. The sequel improved on everything all around.
Oh, definitely. And I also felt a stronger connection with the characters. I think that when you're playing through the first one, there's just so many characters, and you don't really, I don't know, I just kind of felt like there were too many characters to really connect with.
I wasn't after connecting with characters, I was just after shooting.
Well, yeah, I mean, character is less important, but, they really tried to stress how many characters there were that you could pick from, and they just kind of all blended together in a lot of ways, but they all remained different enough that you could play through the game and pick these characters, but they all had different traits. Some were slower, some were faster, some had heavier weapons. They were all different in the first game. In this game, you only had a choice between 4 characters. Leon, who's the main character. Angel, who's the female lead. Lulu, who's kind of the little girl-ish kind of. And then Toy, which... Toy, really?
I don't know. Playing with toys, I guess.
So, I don't know, I just thought that the character design was a little bit more unique and fresh in this one, and it was a lot more fun. They tried to, I feel like Shock Troopers Second Squad, they try to have more fun with the game, and I think it's overall a better, more enjoyable experience.
Agreed, and definitely a recommended play by both of us.
Yes.
All right.
What do we got next?
Next one, we're changing it up a little bit. This is an Amiga track. This is from Metal Law, and this is the Stage 1 theme from Rudolf Stember.
「
And we're back. That was Metal Law on the Amiga. This was the Stage 1 theme from Rudolf Stember, and that came out in 1992.
The sound for the title track was actually composed by Chris Huelsbeck.
Right.
This track, though, is, I believe, the first stage music.
Yep.
And that was by Rudolf Stember. So I don't know why they did that. I think what happened was, I mean, I'm just, like, assuming, but I think they were like, we really need somebody, like, really big to do the soundtrack, you know? Like, let's just do, you know, let's have Chris Huelsbeck do a track. So he did, you know, the title track. And, you know, I think that Rudolf Stember does a good job of continuing that Huelsbeck sound throughout the game. So
yeah, I mean, lots of Commodore and Amiga games back in the day would do that. They would have a different artist do the title screen music or the loader music, and then another artist would do the in-game music. And it might have just worked out to how schedules worked out, or they wanted a particular sound that one particular composer was better at than the other. In terms of names and how big you are, I don't know. Back in 92, I don't know. Stember's worked on a lot of stuff. You know, he started off way back on the C64 in 1989, so he had already been around for 3-4 years at this point when this game came out. So, and then, you know, Huelsbeck, again, he's a huge name now, but at the time, you know, he was just kind of starting out himself too, so we're just postulating, I guess.
That's
here.
true.
In any case, starts off with this great kind of metal track from Huelsbeck on the title screen, and then you get these really nice kind of groovy dance tracks for the levels that you play through.
That dun, dun,
it's got like a house beat to it, yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
And then it matches up and gets a little bit darker towards the end and makes a perfect loop back into the track again. The gameplay is pretty simple, so in typical kind of Amiga fashion, you're getting these really energetic, you know, dancey music tracks to listen to while you're playing through these. This game, it kind of plays a little bit like RoboCop, I would say. I mean, it even sounds and looks a little bit like RoboCop.
The main character, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got like a red visor thing that looks exactly like RoboCop's like visor, but he's wearing like pretty much all armor that looks like RoboCop's armor. So.
Yeah, and he's out there to arrest punks.
Right.
And, you know, it's like...
I mean, the game's
you
called
get little
Metal
vocal
Law.
samples.
Yeah.
It's out around the time where RoboCop was super popular, so they were just kind of capitalizing on that whole idea there.
Well, RoboCop was also a lot bigger in the UK anyways, and since this was an Amiga game and the Amiga was pretty much just a UK system for the most part, it makes sense. I think they're going for the audience that it was designed for. So.
Yeah. The game was developed by New Bits on the RAM.
Yes.
It's a fun title. I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah.
Most recently, Rudolf Stember, he's got so many games to his name, you can't really list them all. But from like the early 2000s, 2003, he was working on the Rogue Squadron games for the Nintendo
Factor
GameCube.
5.
Yeah. He was a Factor 5 employee. He also did some stuff for Capcom in terms of converting the music for Resident Evil 2 on the N64.
Ooh.
And even back in the day, he did a lot of conversion as well. So he would take stuff like Monkey Island, when they ported it down to the C64, he would take the music from the Amiga version and put it on the SID chip. So very talented in that respect. He does a lot of music conversion, original compositions, and then international and German voice editing to localize the games to German or other languages.
Very cool.
Yeah. You can head over to www.stember.com if you want to learn more about him. He's got an updated site where he's got basically his whole work portfolio and samples of stuff that he's done over the years, so it's definitely worth checking out.
Cool. All right, well, our next game is, believe it or not, Lilo and Stitch. This is for the Game Boy Advance. The game came out in 2002, and this track is Bug Laboratory by Mr. Robert Baffy. Let's take a listen. Welcome back. That was Lilo and Stitch for the Game Boy Advance. Game came out in 2002, and that track was called Bug Laboratory by Mr. Robert Baffy. I love that groove. Just like, just really funky, but at the same time very chill, laid back. It's also kind of mysterious though, because that lead synth, that dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
But I really like the fact that the bass line kind of carries the whole song. It's got that overarching sound, kind of like Shock Troopers 2 a little bit in that sense, where the bass kind of takes the lead and kind of does its own thing.
Just those little staccato instances there.
Yeah.
I feel like this could have almost have been an acceptable track for the Summer Jams episode last show.
Yeah, that's true. I really like the fluty kind of synths that kind of fit in a little bit later towards the song, and I like how this song builds too.
Yeah.
It's got a good loop because it starts off kind of chill with that bass line and those, kind of higher end, like mysterious synths, and then it kind of rolls into this almost, I don't know, it like fills out the song really well, but keeps the whole thing very simplistic. I dig it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a run and gun track to me at all.
Doesn't.
It feels like, I could see this track definitely appearing in like the first level of Flashback. Like it feels just right out of like Delphine Software. That kind of instrument set and the composition feels very similar to that game.
This game is great. It is definitely an underrated gem. It's a little easy and simplistic looking.
It's like Metal Gear Light.
Yeah.
Not Metal Gear Light, sorry. It's like Metal Slug Light.
Yes, I agree. Game is basically a retelling of the Lilo and Stitch story. So if you've seen the Disney animated movie, it's a good Disney movie. So, definitely check it out. But, if you're looking for something like, on the cheap, it's like seriously a $4 game everywhere you go. Super cheap, really easy to find in pretty much like any game store. Like I've seen multiple copies and nobody picks this game up. So I gave it a whirl and I really dig it. It's a lot of fun. I like the graphics because the backgrounds look like almost like watercolor.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Well, it feels like it was all animated and drawn by Disney animators.
Yeah, definitely.
It more fits the style of like the Lilo and Stitch cartoon series than the actual movie.
Yeah.
But they were very similar in looks anyway. So, but yeah, this one was fun. We think we've talked about Robert Baffy before.
Yeah, he's done a lot of licensed stuff. Anywhere from Rampage to X-Men. He did the X-Men Wolverine's Rage game, which also has a really good underrated soundtrack. Reign of Apocalypse. He did Rayman for I believe the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, mostly sound design and production.
Yeah.
Not too much composition.
No, not so much. And, he's got a lot of audio director credits for, bigger stuff like Rock Band 3 in 2010, Military Madness, Nectarus in 2009. So, just for the most part, he works with various different companies. He's worked on everything from Death Jr. 2 to Namco Museum 50th anniversary. So he's just kind of all over the place. But, there's a good chance that he could just be a freelancer and not really have any kind of loyalty to any major company. But
very likely. Although recently he's been working more with Midway doing like Mortal Kombat, the arcade collection.
Right. Midway Games, because Midway is no longer a thing.
Well, yeah.
So probably Warner Brothers, because like Warner Brothers, Sony, he did The Amazing Spider-Man 2012. He was the audio designer on that. So yeah, he's kind of all over the place.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff. I don't really have much else to say about it. It's a fun game. I highly recommend picking it up because, again, if you're looking for something cheap to play that's fun, check it out. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
Next up is a game I don't recommend you pick up.
Yes.
This game but it does have good music. This is Realm for the SNES. This is Flying Battleship by Mr. Unknown.
Mr. Unknown?
Mr. Unknown.
Okay, then.
And welcome back. That was Realm for the SNES. That was Flying Battleship, composed by some sort of mysterious being.
Mr. Unknown.
Mr. or Mrs. Unknown. Gotta be gender friendly here. It could also be a female composer. We don't know. Flare Sound Team was the only credit I could find from this, Flare being the developer of this game, in quotes.
You know, here's the thing. 1996 was the release date, and the Super Nintendo was pretty much done at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So this game, while it does have a lot of visual flair, I don't want to... It's visually a bit impressive in terms of the effects. The lighting effects bouncing off the trees is really cool. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah, the sunbeams were great.
I think my biggest problem with the game is the cover art lies to you. Just flat out lies to you. You know, you're looking at the cover art and you've got this short-haired, like, cool guy who's got a gun and he looks really cool. And you start playing the game, and you look like a cute character from a Dragon Ball Z game.
I believe my first impression was that it looked like a 5th grader drew it.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I picked up the game a while back, and it's actually pretty rare. It's pretty hard to find. I think it's getting up there in price. Why, I don't know, because the game's not really that
Probably just
good.
because of release number.
Yeah.
And not necessarily because of, like, you know, how many copies were made versus you know, how good the game actually is.
Most likely had a very low print run, especially for the year that it was released. Super Nintendo was done at that point. So I didn't really get that far with this one. I just kind of got bored with it for the most part. It's, you know, and even when we sat down and played it quite a bit, it's just, I don't know. The enemies are just kind of meh. The level
Everything
layout
is just kind of meh.
Yeah, the level layout's meh. It's
even the weapons that you can get are like the AD350 or the VFR 750. Like, they don't even have cool names. They're just like model numbers. Like, they didn't really do anything to try to
make it unique.
Right. Yeah. Right. Supposedly the game takes place in 5069.
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
You're a biomech cyborg who, of course, has to rid the world of an alien invasion.
Of course,
it's literally the plot of every single run and gun game out there.
Yeah,
but I really like this track. What really grabbed me is the fact that it's so toe tapping and head bobbing, but there's literally, well, not literally no percussion, but the only percussion there is this little tiny snare, like a little patty pat. But the keyboard and the bass, they're just so in tempo with each other, and especially like right towards the end where the bass gets a little more lively and the keyboard melody starts taking off. Like, that part is really, really cool. Yeah. And then it loops back into kind of like a more dancey riff after that.
Even though it's a dance song, for the most part, it does have classical music overtones.
A little bit,
like
like chamber music.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Like, I dig the music in this game. I just, oh god, I don't want to experience it.
That's why soundtrack ripping is so good. You can listen to the music, or you can listen to this show and not have to worry about playing games like this.
This game is like a video game colonoscopy.
Wow, now that is probably the worst review of a video game I've ever heard.
It's like, you know that you have to do it, but you don't want to. But the end result is you get pancakes.
Oh, I got a Whopper after mine.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
I was hungry.
Wow.
Anyhow, let's move on with our next game.
You know what I mean? You don't want to talk about post-colonoscopy meals? Oh man, pancakes
I think we'll
are the
spare
best.
our audience the details.
All right. You mean you didn't want to tell them about the time that, you know, we both got joint colonoscopies?
Well, they were only a couple days apart. Let's alright.
We were holding hands.
Oh. Anyhow,
next game is Metal Slug Advance on the Game Boy Advance. How could we not play Metal Slug?
Of course.
The game came out in 2004. This is Mission 4 by Den Den and Takushi Hayamuta.
Hey there! Enjoying your summer days so far?
Yeah, actually. Just lounging in the sun. But I wish I had something cool to sit on.
I've got just the thing for you. A rocket lawn chair.
Wait, what?
The rocket lawn chair is perfect for relaxing on a hot summer day. Just sit down on this chair and blast off thanks to the 8 powerful jet-fueled rocket boosters.
Why would I want to?
Don't think about why, think about when, because the rocket launch chair is the perfect way to defeat the hundreds of military goons sent by General Morden.
Who? I'm so confused.
It's time to drop the confusion and start with the cruisin', as your rocket launch chair sends you into battle.
I didn't sign up for this.
Wrong! Join the Peregrine Falcon today.
Wait, this was just an advertisement for joining a military front?
Gotta go. Rocket launch chair, do your stuff.
Welcome back. That was Metal Slug Advance on the Game Boy Advance. 2004 was the year of release, and that track was called Mission 4 by Den Den and Takushi Hayamuta.
So I'll clarify that a little bit. There's a lot of conjecture on the web. I've seen Den Den credited alongside Takushi Hayamuta. I've seen Takushi Hayamuta credited by himself for this soundtrack. I've seen people consider that maybe Den Den is the alias for Takushi Hayamuta.
Okay.
Yeah, Takushi Hayamuta obviously is the composer of the original Metal Slug games on the Neo Geo, as well as Super R-Type and Undercover Cops and all those games that we love.
Big time SNK guy.
Knowing his work so well, this song definitely does sound very much like him. And most of the soundtrack, at least what I've heard from this game, sounds very much like him as well. So I'd endeavor to say that he probably is the sole composer on this game, but I don't have official word on that.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, he has worked on a lot of different stuff, but he is
Neo Turf Masters.
Yeah, Neo
Such a
Turf
good
Masters.
soundtrack.
Yeah, he's kind of the Metal Slug guy, though, for the most part. I mean, when you think about Metal Slug, you think of him. So, I really love the Super Nintendo guitar and how it just like pulls in. Like a guitar slide.
This was done really well.
Yeah.
Normally, I'm not one for SNES guitars. I mean, this isn't really SNES; it's GBA, but it does have that sound to it.
Yeah.
But it sounds just a little more clear and a little more gritty, I think, and not so overdriven like the Mega Man X series.
Yeah, true. For this game, you play as Walter Ryan or Tyra Elson. This is actually the first Metal Slug game where you don't play as Marco Rossi or any of the returning Metal Slug characters. Character was never really a big thing for me as far as Metal Slug goes. I think the characters are just kind of goofy looking overall. And so I think that these two characters are unique enough there. First off, they're new recruits. So the whole plot of this game...
Yeah, they look very young and kind of nondescript.
Right, yeah, no, they're definitely younger looking characters. So the whole point of the game is a new camp has been set up for new trainees for the Peregrine Falcon, which is the Metal Slug group.
It's the good guy army.
Yeah, the good guy armory, or good guy army, so to speak. And basically, General Morden shows up, and he tries to capture all the new recruits. So all the prisoners that you're saving, they're not just random skinny bearded guys like in all the other Metal Slug games. They're just other recruits, so just like you, which is really cool. So this game is a little bit different as far as the gameplay goes, and I'm going to be honest, I actually prefer this over the original Metal Slugs. At least in terms of how you play the game. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty much the same as the other Metal Slugs in the sense that it's a run and gun. So, we're doing run and gun games. So, you go from left to right, sometimes you have to go up, down.
Multi-directional.
Yeah, multi-directional. But the difference is it's no longer one-hit kill. Now there's a bar of life.
Yeah.
And I kind of prefer that because when you die, it's just it just takes so much out of you, and even though you're starting off right away, it never feels challenging to me. It never feels like, when it comes to Metal Slug, I never feel threatened because I always know that it's unlimited continues. Because most of my Metal Slug experience, aside from playing a couple of them in the arcade or at my local Pizza Hut restaurant,
gross.
Most of my experience for Metal Slug has been on consoles. My first Metal Slug game that I ever owned was Metal Slug X, actually. So, I don't know. I prefer this because it gives you a little bit more challenged. There's a possibility that you could die, and if you die, you have to start over, or you have to start at the checkpoint.
Yeah.
And so it's just different. I don't know.
I have mixed feelings about it. You know, I'm such a big Metal Slug fan that I feel like it should be a one-hit kill, because it's just the way that Metal Slug games are.
Sure.
And why would you do this to Metal Slug? But at the second hand, you're zoomed in more on the character. There's less gameplay screen on the Game Boy Advance version. So it's a little easier to get hit, plus, you know, if you're not playing like on the Game Boy Player or on the GameCube or something like that, if you're playing on a handheld without a backlight or something like that, it's going to be a lot easier to get hit because the bullets aren't big and garish, and they could blend in with the background a lot more. So I guess it would need to be a little more forgiving. So, you know, we called Lilo and Stitch Metal Slug Light. This is like truly Metal Slug. This is the official Metal Slug Light.
Yeah, except I believe it's one-hit kill in Lilo and Stitch, if I recall. Oh no, it was three-hit kill. There were three bars of life. Yeah. So this is very similar to Lilo and Stitch. So if you like Lilo and Stitch, this one's a little bit more pricey, but it is worth it to pick it up. There's a card system where you can basically, if you save the hostages, they give you items like, you know, bread or, you know, canned soup or, you know, just various different items, and they give you a card. And the whole point of the game after you actually beat
Thanks
the game...
for rescuing me. Here's a card with bread on it.
Yeah. So after you beat the game, you're pretty much going for the card collecting. And so there's a ton of replayability in the game to be able to unlock all these cards. So there's 100 cards that you can collect throughout the game. So it's pretty cool in that sense that you can, you know, keep playing afterwards. It's not like the other Metal Slug games where it's like once you beat them, that's it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Cool stuff.
All right.
Good track, good game. What's next?
Next up is Time Soldier. This is the Amiga version of the game. This came out in 1989. The name of the track is World Wars by very popular composer Alistair Brimble. Let's give it a listen.
Welcome back. That was Time Soldier on the Amiga. That came out in 1989, and the track was called World Wars by Mr. Alistair Brimble. I don't know. I wasn't feeling this game or this. I don't know. The track was okay. It went all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, it was cool that it had places to go. I wanted a little bit more of a lockdown on sound, and I kind of feel like there was just kind of. It was more open-ended than I wanted it to be, audio-wise.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty long track, and knowing the game, because I've played it quite a bit, not too much, but the levels really aren't as long as the track is, so those kind of other, almost more industrial-sounding pieces towards the end, you might not even really hear in the game that much.
Yeah.
It's a top-down game, and the world doesn't auto-scroll, so you kind of pick the... As you walk up, the screens kind of scroll with you, but it's not like you would be sitting around on an empty screen doing nothing for too long. So, yeah, I feel like maybe he just was feeling the song himself and just kind of decided to put some other pieces in there. The game itself was a port of Sega's arcade game called Time Soldiers. And this is Time Soldier, so there's a little bit of a difference there. And the arcade game only used a very simple monaural sound chip, so it didn't really have that much music to begin with anyway. So I think these are all original compositions from Brimble, maybe loosely based on some of the melodies that were in the original game, but I think he mostly did all of them himself.
Yeah, the game itself takes place in various different time periods, ancient Rome, like the dinosaur primitive locations during World War, like the World Wars, like World War I, World War II, and then the Age of War, and then Future World, which I assume is just a future location.
It's the world of the future.
Yeah, actually this got ported to the Master System as well, but that one you actually only have 3 continues, which it's a little shocking in a game like this. And there's no ABBA code like in Ikari Warriors. And again, this is pretty much a direct rip-off of Ikari Warriors. It's a shame because I really don't like Ikari Warriors. I think it's slow, I think it's awkward, and I was never a fan of any of the Ikari Warriors games.
Yeah, me neither.
But I don't know, I like the mechanics and the structure of Ikari Warriors. I just always felt like Ikari Warriors was just too slow for me.
On the NES, yeah. I mean, the arcade version was much more smooth and much more playable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've only played the NES version.
Yeah, no, the NES version, I'm sure you've seen the Angry Video Game Nerd video on that.
I love that video.
He tears it apart, and it's deserved, because it's a really, really difficult game because of how it was made.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to Time Soldier. Yeah, so you travel through different time periods. I like it because it's not like it's the same tile sets over and over again, and it kind of keeps it fresh. The enemies fight you using different weapons, and they look very different, and they use different armaments, and sometimes they use accurate formations. Like soldiers will come at you in groups, redcoats would or knights would, and
the British are coming.
Yeah, exactly. So, it was kind of historically accurate, I guess, as historically accurate as you can get for an arcade game.
Right.
But it did kind of feel like you were actually in those time periods as you were battling your enemies.
Cool.
So, worth checking out. The Amiga version is pretty good, but the arcade version is definitely the best.
Word. All right, let's move out of Future World and into more Future World. This is Gunlord on the Neo Geo and Sega Dreamcast. This game came out in 2012. This track is called Stage 1, and it's by Raphael Deal. my god, that was Gunlord. So good. Dreamcast, Neo Geo, 2012 is the release date. Stage 1 was a track by Mr. Raphael Deal. I believe I'm pronouncing that right.
We'll go with that.
Yeah, why not? Oh my god, such a good track. Fell in love with this track.
This is like the musical version of somebody saying, Chris Huelsbeck, will you marry me?
Okay. All right, then.
Well, no, I mean, it sounds Turrican, you know?
Oh,
the game is basically a love letter to Turrican.
Oh, totally.
This music is a love letter to Chris Huelsbeck's soundtrack, so...
Oh, man, where do I start? Let's go with the bongos.
Sure.
Love the bongos in the beginning. Yeah, why not? I love bongos. It's just so good. Just like you got that harmony kind of going with those main synths. The da 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 da.
Yeah, very rich sound to those synths.
Yeah, really good stuff. And then the bongos kick in, and you're like, "Where's this track gonna go?" And it's got these sweeping kind of synths that come in, and then they kind of layer on top of that like some really amazing harmonies. Like they put in that lead synth harmony where there's a different octave level. And it's just that kicks it up a notch for me. I'm just like, dude, throw in anything where an octave goes up or down along that main lead like synth, and I'm just like, I'm yours. That's it, man.
I've been playing a good amount of this lately, and the first stage is pretty darn long. I haven't been able to make it through, but in all of the times and attempts I've made to get through this, the beginning part of this game, I never once got tired of this track.
Oh no,
it's just totally amazing.
You know, it's game music as it should be. It keeps you going, which is really cool. The game's story is actually a continuation of a previous game that NG dev team created called The Last Hope, where you play as a gunship with a pilot by the name of Vanessa Gaiden. So it basically takes place at the end of The Last Hope. And so Vanessa Gaiden, even though she escapes and she wins in the end, she never makes it home. And so her husband, who is named Gordian Gaiden, is essentially looking for her, and he's not finding her. But meanwhile, there's this super baddie called the Master that shows up to, rain havoc on the world, on the galaxy, so to speak. So he basically is like enslaving humans, as they describe in the intro cutscene.
Just kind of like what the machine does in Turrican, so it's very kind of parallel to that.
Very true. Gordian Gaiden has to try to see if he can find Vanessa. He's like, where's Vanessa? So he's got to go out and search for her. So he jumps in his Gunlord suit and goes after the Master.
His Gunlord suite.
His Gunlord suite?
Yes. Well, because there's all sorts of English. That's not English.
Oh, right.
I don't know whether they're intentional or not, but there's a whole bunch of misspellings in the first.
Yeah. It's really funny.
Kind of funny.
Yeah, the intro is great.
Yeah, he gets into his Gunlord suite instead of his Gunlord suit.
Yeah, the intro is really cool. The gameplay is just awesome. It's really cool stuff. To me, it feels a little slower than Turrican, though, especially Mega Turrican, if you compare it with that. But
of course, you never know what the other levels are like. We haven't been there yet.
Yeah, we haven't been there yet. I haven't gotten past the first level.
There is a level select cheat code that you can use.
Or don't do that.
But, I don't want to do that.
Don't. No. Bad Ed. Bad Ed. He's like, I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to do it.
No, I'm not going to do it.
But man, just the game soundtrack is fantastic. Interestingly enough, these games don't, because they're more homebrew style games, they're unofficial, yet kind of official for Dreamcast or Neo Geo.
They're made by professional
releases.
developers, but
Correct.
they're not licensed by Sega or SNK for the Neo Geo or the Dreamcast.
Right, but I would say that they're pretty much official. They're as indie can get.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
they're discontinued systems, so
right.
They have the right, they can put whatever they want on there, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They tried to port it to the Wii U and the 3DS, but unfortunately they canceled the project, and then it was going to come out for the Coleco Chameleon, but that was canceled, so let's not even get into that.
Talking about
No. But as far as the game, it released in multiple different formats, which NG Dev Team is very famous for, and so I really like the limited edition cover on this. It's really cool. For a physical collector, it's definitely a cool thing to get. There's also all these like posters and stuff that you can get too. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that released with the game. For me personally though, I'm not going to drop on eBay $150 for a cover. So yeah, I just printed the cover.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad about it one
Go
bit.
ahead and do it.
Yeah, man.
I give you permission.
All right, thank you. Thank you, sir. May I have another? So,
No,
yeah.
one copy of Gunlord is enough.
That's true. Yeah. Good stuff. For Raphael Diehl, he is a German composer. And he
Just
mainly...
like Huelsbeck.
Yes. He mainly worked with NG Dev Team. He's done a bunch of stuff for remixes, such as remix sites like Remix 64 and Revival ST. But the first game that he put sound to was Last Hope.
Yep.
He's also worked on various different PlayStation Network games like Soldner X, I believe is how you pronounce it.
It's a horizontal shooter. It's really good.
Yep, yeah, there's a couple of those. There's Soldner X, Himmelsstürmer, and then Soldner X2, Final Prototype. He did Last Hope, Pink Bullets, and Last Hope. Fast Striker, he did the voice sound effects engineering for. The Last Chapter, Gunlord, and Rainbow Moon.
Yep, and
Rainbow Moon was the last game.
Well, they just announced that Diehl will be composing the soundtrack to NG Dev Team's next game called Krautbuster.
Okay.
If Gunlord is a love letter to Turrican, Krautbuster is a love letter to Metal Slug. It's another run-and-gun game.
Sweet.
So he's going to be... I think his first track just came out on the trailer to the gameplay for that game, and it sounds really good, so I'm really looking forward to Krautbuster when that releases.
Very cool. Awesome.
All right, let's get into our last track of the show.
Man, I'm excited.
This one's a doozy, and it's one of our favorite games. This is Broforce, came out in 2015. This is the Broforce theme song by the band known as Strident. Oh my god, my head hurts.
Welcome back, that was Broforce!
Yes. Broforce released on many different systems, PS4, Xbox One, Steam in 2015. That was the Broforce theme song from Strident, a band from Cape Town, South Africa.
All right, then. You like this track?
Oh, I love this track.
I am shocked.
I know.
This is power metal.
Yeah, well,
this
I know.
is like straight up power metal.
But it's so well done.
Oh, it's good stuff. I mean, most power metal stuff is really high production.
Yeah.
Just wheedly, squeedly, meedly guitars. Very big focus on like minor tones and harmonies, melodies, just really good stuff.
I think the vocals are what really got it. Like, I love the composer of the whole soundtrack on a whole. His name is Dion Van Heerden. And so he sings, plays guitar, he wrote the songs. The rest of the soundtrack in this game is very kind of cinematic. It's kind of almost ambient with really, really thick, like pounding, almost like taiko drums. Well,
I mean, most of the sound that you're hearing is just explosions.
Well, yeah,
throughout the entire game. It's kind of a cheeky, tongue-in-cheek shoot 'em up that you're going through as these various different characters.
Bros.
Yeah, bros. They're all like movie characters that have been changed to avoid licensing, issues.
Well, yeah, they're parodies of the characters.
Right.
So, there's Brobocop and the Brominator.
Right.
And the Brodock Saints.
Yeah.
Which are my favorite guys.
Brodock.
Who else is in there? There's
Ellen Ripley. There's,
Ellen Broby? I forgot what they call her. I don't know. But it's not just dudes. It's, it's female heroines and male heroes and the whole environment that you play in. So it's a side-scroller. And the graphics are, pseudo 8-bit, so they're pixely, but they're, definitely enhanced. And if you kind of imagine how Minecraft is, where everything is made up of, like, destructible blocks, but some are not destructible,
right?
That's the way this game is. So anything you shoot pretty much disintegrates.
Yeah.
But they make sure to leave enough indestructible blocks so that you can jump from place to place so that you don't, totally get lost just by shooting a rocket launcher at the wrong thing. Lots of enemies, they explode in like fountains of gore.
Oh yeah.
And it's great for multiplayer because you can you rescue hostages along the way that are in cages, and you get a random bro every time that you enter the cage.
Right.
So
there's a lot of characters in the game that you can unlock,
and your character switches to that person that you rescue. So then all of a sudden you're like Will Smith from not Independence Day.
Bro in Black.
Yeah, Will Smith from Bro in Black.
Yeah.
Or Men in Black. I'm getting confused here now. So if you die on the level because it's hard, the next time you go through it, you might have a different bro when you rescue somebody else. So it might be easier for you with that person. It's just the gameplay is so deep. There's like 60 or 45 different bros that you can get. They all play differently. They're all fun as hell to play with. The artwork is fantastic.
It's a silly game. It's a silly game. It doesn't take itself seriously.
Not at all.
But at the same time, it's a pretty deep, rich experience.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff.
I've played all the way through it myself.
Oh, really? One thing I wanted to mention is when you beat a level, whoever is the last person to grab the helicopter ladder, you get whisked away, and you just hear this awesome, tapping guitar solo, and there's like explosions everywhere as your
level blows up behind you as you fly away.
And the best part is on the PS4 controller, if you look at the light on the back of the controller, it flashes red, white, and blue.
Yes.
It's so good. It's just so goofy. I love it.
Lots and lots of fun.
Good stuff. All right, so that brings us to the end of our Run and Gun episode 65. We want to thank you guys so much for listening, and we want to talk a little bit about, before we end, some
couple
podcasts.
Plugs.
Yeah, a couple plugs that we're working on here.
Yeah, so we were actually just a couple days ago, we did the recording for, we were guests on Rhythm and Pixels, another VGM podcast, and that's hosted by Rob and Purnell. And we had an awesome time.
Yeah, they were great.
They do episodes like they were video game levels. They do 1-1, 1-2, 1-3.
Right.
So this was episode 4-1. So we did video game music from level 4 of games. That was our kind of like our mission. So we picked a lot of cool tracks. They also play some remixes and covers from like stuff you might find on OC Remix, so they did some of that. So they were great guys, and we're going to plan to have them on our show in the near future. So
definitely.
That will have been released, June 27th, I believe that came out. So about a week and a half ago. So go back, check out the Rhythm and Pixels lineup, and you will see our episode 4-1. Give them a listen, and if you like them, subscribe to them, because they're great guys. They do a good show.
Agreed. I was also a guest on the Bloodstained podcast, which is hosted by our good friend Mike McDaniel. So we will, you definitely want to check that out as well. You can also check out the Bloodstained forums where you can chat about Bloodstained. Basically, if you're a Castlevania fan, you're going to love this because we talked about the demo that recently came out for Bloodstained. So definitely check out that podcast because I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, he's otherwise known as Zombie Mike online. You might
Right.
see him, Zombie with an X. So he's definitely a good guy, definitely worth checking out and supporting his stuff. So
Agreed. Yeah,
Hi, Mike.
He does a great job over at Bloodstained, so go check that out. As always, thanks again for listening. You can check out the rest of the podcast or other episodes at pixeltunesradio.com or on iTunes, where you can give us a rating and give us a review. Let us know how we're doing and what you'd like to see on the podcast or what your thoughts are on it.
Totally. Also, check out my other side project, Impulse Project. That's with my friend Brian from Pixelated Audio. We do demo scene music, and you've got your video series as well.
YouTube.com/Dongold, where you can check out Dude, You Haven't Played This Game. I'm in the midst of releasing a ginormous Tomb Raider series of episodes, so definitely check that out. You will not be sorry. I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit.
Awesome. I'm going to go home and play some Gunlord.
That's right.
Not use the cheat code.
And don't use that
I'm
cheat
not going
code.
to use the cheat
You
I'm telling
son
myself
of a-
I'm not going to use the cheat code because
Don't do it.
I feel like I want to use the cheat
You
code.
need to experience the whole game.
You need to help me.
I need to help
No,
you?
no, no.
Do you want me to hold your hand just like in the colonoscopy?
I'm gonna like call you in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Be like, Mike, I feel like I need to use the cheat code, and you're just gonna talk me down.
Yeah.
Out of it.
Don't do it, man. Step away from the ledge. The cheat code ledge.
I will get through it on my own. I can do
my
it.
own.
All by myself.
All right, boys and girls, stay tuned. 2 weeks, a mystery episode will be revealed. I still haven't picked it, but we'll figure out
He hasn't
something.
unlocked it yet.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you again for listening, guys. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Peace.